Firmenich have ridden this really well, the Dutch team that have always had strong German talent within them. And this is the tail end of our main peloton, isn't it? And I'm not sure that something hasn't happened, because it didn't strike me. They have gone over that climb, but
it's just going through the town, Jez, when
right.
The gaps have opened, and it's the same when it gets very technical, putting on the brakes, it stretches out a little bit. A couple of riders starting to feel the pinch. I've decided that, I've let the wheel go, and of course the riders behind have to close these gaps.
Here's the first of those canyons, created in part by the limestone mining that is common right the way along this Teutoburg Forest ridge, and that's us looking along the ridge there as well. Pretty ridge of hills, not unlike, if I was to draw it to an English an English comparison, the Chiltern Hills stretching westward from London, in which I was cycling just a few days ago, Brian. Lovely, lovely ridge of hills, similar kind of height, not big climbs by any means, but lots of ups and downs, and a nice ridge you can make your way along it. Forested too, although the Chiltern Hills recently have suffered all sorts of terrible tree diseases which are devastating parts of the forests that look along it. This looks lush and green. Thankfully there's been plenty of rain in recent weeks as well. This is the front of the chase group. The chase group, the main group, the peloton we'll call them. Intermarché Circus Wanty with no one in the leading group, so understandably they're involved with that chase. And now we're looking at the tail end of it again. It's the same riders just struggling away a little bit. And this is on the climb of the Tecklenburg. And this is a pretty common sight we're going to see on this circuit. Quite narrow roads, in actual fact, up through the forest here. Actually, I don't think this is the Tecklenburg. I'm giving Duff information there. It's further up, just on the outskirts of Tecklenburg, the town itself. It's the climb of the Grafenstrasse. This is a classified climb. We may have missed the classification point at the front of our leading group. This is the second classified climb that they take in each of these 15k laps. And now we see the speed that they're taking these corners, Brian, pretty quickly. It was just one dodgy corner, wasn't it? With something on it that caused a problem. It happens. Thankfully, from what we could see, most people back up and running again after that spill on the left-hand corner. Left-hander, that's the expression I'm looking for. Brian, is it just me, or over the last, 6 months, does it look to you as if the sock length rule has been relaxed, shall we say, or ignored? Because some of these socks are mighty high. I know it's a Duff discussion, but I'm just saying. Come on, get involved. You've got your hand across your mouth. I can see you trying not to say anything.
I don't know. I know there's a reason for it. It makes a difference, but I'm not kind of really looking at socks. More so when it gets to time trialing, I can see, but
yeah.
You start, you get them measured, and then you pull them up. And
is that one of those things?
What can you do?
Is that one of those things, Brian, that comes back to that age-old UCI thing of trying to protect the image of the sport? So a racing cyclist in a road race looks like a racing cyclist in a road race. In a time trial, this is going to look slightly different. Is it that? Because the rule that's been used, the UCI have said before that certain rules are being brought in to protect, so that technological advantage and money doesn't necessarily mean that by spending a certain amount of money you're going to be that much faster than someone else across different levels of the sport. I can't believe that longer socks are that much more expensive than shorter socks made from the same material. I know you can get extremely expensive aero socks. If we look at Max Wildscheid here, I mean, he's a big, tall guy. That is a long pair of socks. You know, on Caleb Ewan, that's leg warmers almost. You know, they are long. I mean, I know we don't talk about it that much anymore, but I'm just curious. Some of them look. I thought the rule originally was something like halfway up the main body of your calf muscle. The gastroc, is it your gastroc? The gastroc medial. No, oh dear, I'm digging myself a hole here, aren't I? Anyway. Do you want me to park that there, Brian? You're not saying anything, so I think I'm going to park it.
No, this aerodynamic advantage. It's the same with when they took tape down the front. I know that happens in Britain in a lot of time trials. You just have to look at what they get away with. You know, they're only showing their knees, and you know the aerodynamic advantage that they've got. So yeah, it's just the advantage that they get. Not many people, you know, consider, but there's a lot of different elements combined together help the CDA, did they call it?
Yeah, the drag coefficient, how much you catch the wind, or how much of a punch you make into the wind with your body and your bike. I forget, Brian, as we watch a little lifting of the pace into the narrowing of the road here in our leading group up through the forest. I forget who I was on air with a few weeks ago. Who on earth was it? But I was talking about how tricky it can be, and I'm happy to confess I've tried a pair of these aero socks, but I couldn't get them to stay up. They kept slipping down, and a like bunched up set of aero socks looks absolutely terrible. Who was it? It was definitely a male co-commentator I was on with, and he said, "Oh, it's very common. You just use some honey." Like literally wipe a little bit of honey around the top of the inside of the sock, doesn't go anywhere. Who was it? Now, if anyone was listening at home, they'll know.
Definitely not me.
No, exactly. There's no way you'd be saying that. Who was it? Anyway, I think
just have a smaller pair of socks.
Well, yeah. Anyway, there we go. That is the next ascent, and once again it's Jakob Gessner over the top, or Jakob Gessner I should say, over the top of the Grafenstrasse. That's the high point of this circuit, and actually these shots making it look particularly climby, but it is quite gradual. I think the fact that we're in a forest makes it look worse than it is. If we were in open terrain, it wouldn't look quite as bad a climb, but that tree-lined kind of tunnel-like vision looking up through the climb. The Grafenstrasse average gradient just over 4%. So Jakob Gessner, by the looks of it, uncontested by Moritz Kresge on that one. And that means we're getting a little bit closer to restarting the start of the circuit again in Leiden, where we joined it. There's a kind of a flat now over the top on the ridge before starting the second lap. Remember, folks, if you're watching this, once we come off this circuit we're on now, we go downhill, and that's pretty much it. Flat all the way to the finish. It's then about 63k to the end, but it really is pan flat, and that's when the end game will start to be played out. And if there is still 90 seconds between these two groups coming off this circuit, Brian, that could be very interesting, because it's still quite close, isn't it? I thought it might have gone out a bit more by now, and we're presuming that time gap is accurate, but it's not over, is it? 90 seconds.
No, it's not, but you know who's going to ride. You still got Intermarché, is Lotto Destiny getting involved here, but there's less riders now willing to ride. So Intermarché, one of the kind of original teams that came to the front, Q36.5, one rider. The Benotti team in the light blue, one rider. Is it a case of Lotto Destiny just putting one rider up? If it is the case, then you know why not put more riders up and kind of bring this one down? The more that this goes on, Jez, the more that these riders are starting to run out of energy of themselves in the peloton. They're going to run out of resources. So I still favour the front group. The win is going to come from there.
The observation tower here indicating that we are right on top of the ridge, looking eastward, I think, now by the looks of it. Back along it, P&S Benotti back on the front. Might get a little look at the smart-looking Benotti bike that the rider's on. I had a good look at them during the Deutschland Tour. Nice-looking machines as well. Kind of a half and half between an aero bike and a kind of standard road bike as well. I wonder how quickly this might have been brought back if Christophe Laporte wasn't in that leading group. It's really, with all those Jumbo-Visma riders there, I wonder if Christophe hadn't been there, so we were then just left with Bertrand Hagenes and Eduardo Affini there. They might have been adding a bit more to the chase. Well, they would have been adding more to the chase, I suspect, particularly if Christophe was back here. But I guess we'll watch how this unfolds. Did I say Christophe? I meant Christophe Laporte, not Alexander Christophe. I'm mixing up my Christophs here. But with the European champion up there, so keen to show off his jersey, as he's been saying this week, and presumably in very good form too. It's kind of an ideal scenario. We are halfway through this race now, exactly halfway through with 97k to go. What I thought I might do is ask some of our viewers at home to give us, because we're nearly at the end of the season, we're not quite there, it's the Lombardia this weekend, but as I talk about the race of the falling leaves, we see the fallen leaves rolling around the riders here underneath their wheels as we track them back down this descent down onto the going out onto the second lap of this circuit. I want to put a shout out to people at home to give us your highlight of the season. What has been your highlight of, it could be men's or women's. Let's stick to road racing and avoid the gravel and cyclocross and everything else at the moment. But please, can you send us your highlight from the season? One highlight only. What was the moment you look back on? It could be right the way back in the springtime. It could be somewhere in the summer. It might be as far back as the Tour Down Under. What was a real highlight for you? Something you look back on and remember fondly. It might not even be a win. It could just be a key moment in a race. Let us know what they are. You can ping them to us on social media. I am at Jez Cox and Brian is at Bryce Smithy. And we'll do our best to read some of them out. It'll be a nice way to look back on the year that has been. What stuck out for you? Let's call it moment of the year. And then if you want to, if you're pinging us a message like that, tell us who you think is going to be a rider to watch in the coming year. Again, it could be men or women. Yeah, you don't have to do both, but one or the other maybe. Highlight of the year and someone you're excited to see next year. Not necessarily someone who's at the very highest point of the sport, but someone who's up and coming that you think is going to have a big year next year. Who is it? Share your thoughts with us at Jez Cox, JEZCOX, and at BRI Bry Smithy with a Y on the end of it. And we'll have a look through them and hopefully read some of them out. Keep them clean, please. Well, that's indicative of how much the chase is on in that second group. 1 minute 36 down. And this all happening, and it all having happened, not really through attacking at all, but through a split that happened very early on in the race, in the first, 40 kilometres or so that this happened. Highlight for you of the year, Brian, if I'm chucking that out there to our viewing public on social media, what would you say? A moment.
It wasn't maybe a moment, but a race. Not being biased here, but the men's elite road race world championship.
Oh. Yeah.
The whole way that was raced out, coming onto the circuits, what happened in that race, it's just incredible the way that Mathieu van der Poel won it. It was just a great race.
Yeah, the drama was incredible. I was of course lucky enough to be there on the finish line as well in George Square, but it made great television as well as being a brilliant spectator event on the ground, and all those different disciplines coming together as well. Yeah, it was a serious high point and breaking new ground in our sport as well by bringing everything together like that. And we'll look forward to the next one. in France, on the edge of the French Alps as well, in the Haute-Savoie. Okay, we've got a few coming in already. JB on Twitter says, Sepp's landmark Tour of Spain win, and he says in brackets, and yes, I am an American. I'd agree with that. I don't think, in fact, I haven't seen anyone, Brian, anyone at all saying a bad thing about Sepp Kuss at all. I think his win in the Vuelta was very well received, inside and outside the pro peloton, from what I hear as well. So, nice one, JB. Recent pick, but yeah, a good one. Certainly the sense I got covering the American cyclocross races the last couple of weeks has been, yeah, real excitement on, you know, having a new American Grand Tour winner. First since Chris Horner, of course, won the Vuelta. What? 10, 12 years ago now, isn't it? Since Chris Horner won the Vuelta. Do you think, Brian, and I'm going to ask you again, you don't have to answer, you know that with all my questions, sometimes you don't answer at all, which is fine. Is this a start of a new phase of the career of Sepp Kuss as a Grand Tour contender, or do you think it's just or do you think it's a not a one-off, but you know what I mean, a nice high point in his career?
It's one-off. I would say it is that. What he's done this year has been incredible. I think has to be up there. It's a difficult one with Matthew van der Poel and kind of the Wout van Aert, Tom Pidcock, and what he's done in different kind of disciplines. But I have to say that Sepp Kuss is up there, definitely my top three for Rider of the Year. What he does, what he sacrifices, and he's won his Grand Tour. Most people just, you know, hope to get to ride a Grand Tour, maybe finish a Grand Tour, but he's actually won a Grand Tour. But I think his job, and I think in some of the interviews, I never covered the Vuelta, but I caught kind of snippets and caught up. He's quite happy with the role that he's got. I remember interviewing him a few years ago when he won his first stage of the Vuelta, and you know, he was quite happy in that role. He doesn't want to be that you know, Grand Tour contender. He's quite happy just supporting other riders and maybe getting that opportunity to go for stages and win these stages. So, but yeah, he has to be definitely one of the Riders of the Year and what he does for others, and great to see someone like that get that success.
Just coming up to the Längeritscheberg climb now, and that means, of course, that Jakob Gessner is following the back wheel of Niels Pollitt, ready to try and pop off and score some more points. I think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to have any competition in this now, because by the looks of it, Moritz Kretschky has given up. Moritz Kretschky's still in the group, but we watch Jakob Gessner second wheel just behind Niels Pollitt, who's doing what Niels Pollitt does, setting a long hard tempo on the front. And I think we'll see Jakob Gessner pop off in a minute and get some more maximum points. He has a sense to look round over his shoulder, make sure no one's coming up on him. Can't see anyone coming up on him just yet. And there are a few riders, including Max Walscheid, of course, swinging out to grab a bottle. And Jakob Gessner will do a decent turn on the front as well to kind of return the favour, swinging around that bend and taking maximum points there on the Längeritscheberg at the start of this second lap now. There are 2 laps to go of this circuit, and then we start the run southwestward in the direction of our finish, of course, in Munster, the city of Munster, where we'll take in those 3 final laps, 3 closing laps. Oh, lovely one from Sue on Twitter. Her moment of the season was the end of the Giro, Cav winning the sprint from Geraint Thomas lead out. Absolutely right. What a moment. Certainly for British fans of British cycle sport, but also fans of our great sport as a whole. What a moment that was for Mark Cavendish. Didn't quite go his way at the Tour de France, but we might be treated to that option next year. Thanks for that, Sue. Oh, another lovely one here as well. Thank you for getting in touch with Brian and I on Twitter. Lovely one from Colin Squires, reminding us his highlight of the season was probably Matej Mohoric interview after stage 19 of the Tour de France. That wonderfully emotional interview where he was, very emotional, in tears, talking about his dreams as a young man, starting out in cycling.